seconds and double check that we've got some viewers. We are lagging a lot. Maybe everybody got fed up waiting on us because we were so long. There we go, got one a viewer which might be Olivia, maybe, or it might be Shalene, not sure. Right, cool, we've got 2 eyeballs on us. Hello. Oh, 5, that went up fast. Good morning everybody, apologies for the delay there. We just ran out of time. I hope that you're all well. Week 2 of second lockdown art lessons. And this week we are going to be concentrating on another way to create a winter landscape. Now I'm going to go over the resources in a little second. Can I just say first of all thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you to mums, dads, granny, grandpas, uncles, aunties, whoever it is that's looking after you just now. Hello to anyone that might be watching us in school as well. I hope you're all getting on okay in the hubs and are working hard. We will post this straight after onto the Facebook page, and we've also got our YouTube page up and running so you can watch it on then, which is a great resource as well to have if you don't have Facebook. Right, today is all about texture in our work. Now I'm going to go over the resources that we'll be using. Please think outside the box. If there's anything that you don't have, please do not panic. And remember what I said to you last week, if ever you need some resources, please just get in touch with me, because I am more than happy to drop some off to you or let you come around and borrow some bits and bobs if you need to. We're allowed in school now, so I can also go and collect stuff if you need to. So the resources that we're going to use today for our texture collage, you will need 4 pieces of paper. Now we're going to be doing 4 different painting techniques. 4 different painting techniques, so 1 technique on each piece of paper. Because we're doing winter landscapes, like these 2, we're going to stick with a monochrome palette, so that means 1 colour. So our monochrome palette for this is going to be black and white.
That's 2 colours, or shades.
Okay. So we're going to be sticking with black and white for this.
And grey.
Shh, please be quiet. So whatever you plan on using today, try and stick with that theme. Now we are going to be using block paints for this technique, for this painting lesson today, sorry. These are fab. If you don't have them, I really suggest that you go and get some, because the tray costs a couple of pounds and the paints cost a couple of pounds as well. So you can have a full set of paints for about £5 or £6. And I love using them in the home because you don't need to clean up afterwards. So you can stick the mat down, stick the paints out, get some water, a couple of brushes, if you want to use brushes that is, and paint away. You don't need to clean up at the end. Cannot stand cleaning up paint palettes and everything that we've used. So they just get shoved back in the cupboard. They're also good because they come in a tray like this, and you only have the basic colours, but you can encourage then colour mixing. So you can colour a brown, you can mix a green, you can go for purple, you can go for grey. So with 6 colours there, you can get all the colours that you need to create a really, really nice painting. They're water based and water soluble, so that means that they wash out really easily as well, so they shouldn't mark your clothes too badly. So yeah, we're going to be using these. If you don't have these, please don't panic. Watercolours in the tray will work. You can also use just black and white liquid paint and dilute them down. If you don't have, if you don't have any paints at all, experiment a little bit. How else could you create the textures that we're going to show you? Is there any oil pastels or chalks that you have at home? Could you even just use a pencil and use different marks with your pencil? Use the pencil on its side, use the pencil tip, cross hatch your lines, stipple, do lots and lots of little dots. So could you build up textures just using normal materials? It doesn't need to be fancy things like we're showing you today. Right, you'll need paints. You'll need a brush. Now, we're going to be getting quite rough with these brushes, so don't use like a really, really nice watercolour brush. It'll get broken, it'll get bent. Try and go for these cheap sort of stubby brushes. I, in school, like to use the ones that are kind of at the their last legs, so the ones that are really actually kind of fit for the bin are quite nice for this because you give them quite punishment routines here. You'll need a sponge. This is one of my old ones from the cupboard. Don't use the scouring side, use the spongy side. And if you're using a sponge, the sponge that's actually really, really good are the ones with the big holes in them. So the ones that maybe you use for washing the car or in the bath, like the loafer sort of sponges. They're brilliant, but they're quite expensive. So, yeah. No, it's good. It'll still work, but it's not got good. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember. I'm looking for the holes that you get in the sponge, the ones that let the air in. Right, so would you stop talking to me? You keep distracting me and I keep forgetting what I'm wanting to say next. You're very distracting, Alex Cochran. Okay, so you've got a sponge, you've got your brush, you've got your paints, you've got a tub for water. I like to use bowls in the classroom or these plastic tubs because normally when people leave their brushes at the top and they go to grab it, that's when it gets knocked over. So I like a tub of water and it's easier for swirling around it as well. So we've got a tub of water, we've got a sponge, we've got brushes, we've got paints. We have got 4 pieces of paper. Now, because we're going monochrome, try and go for a mixture of black and white. I have just gone easy with 2 pieces of black, 2 pieces of white. If you don't have black, just go all white. If you don't have white, just go all black. If you don't have any of that, experiment a little bit. What else could you use? Could you use gift wrap? Could you use an old piece of wallpaper? Could you use newsprint? Not really very many people read newspapers anymore, unless your granddad does. Could you use a piece of newspaper? Could you use, our bathroom's got loads of monochrome on the wall because we have decorated it with the Bruins catalogue, Daddy's cartoons. So you can maybe use a couple of sheets of that. So think outside the box a little bit. If you don't have paper, what else could you use? So we're going to use that. Now for the second part of the lesson, once your papers have dried, you're going to want to add things onto your landscape. So on this one here, this snowman has just been created just by using some white paper. We've got some highlights on the trees. We've got a moon up there just created with chalks. And on this one here, we've got some black pen there as well. So you could use black pen, you could use chalk markers, oil pastels, chalks, collage, whatever you have kicking about at home. So, pop those to the side just for now. So this is quite an experimental lesson today. When you're doing this, you might think, I'm not going to finish this just now, I'm going to come back and do it once it's 100% dry. That's totally fine. I've actually painted the 4 textures last night and they're dry now, so I can show you step 2, but I appreciate at home that's not doable. If you do want to take part as well, another thing that you could do is go and get a hairdryer and quickly blast it. Right, textures are in the background. Sophie, I've put the checklist up. She was a bit upset with me last week because I didn't do a checklist on that. So, textures. Now, this was really hard writing back to front, by the way. Written them back to front for the screen. You can do them in any order that you want, but I do recommend that number 4, which is wash, I should have really put this at the top, I do recommend that you do that first because you need to leave it to dry. Okay, it's the back there, it's going to be the sky to your landscape, so it's really important that you do that one first. Give it time to dry. But if you're planning on catching up later on, that bit won't matter. Now, wash is the only technique out of all 4 that you need a lot of water for. Okay, the rest of them, you don't want to use a lot of water at all. You want to have damp implements. You want to have a damp brush and a damp sponge. You don't have a lot of water for scumble, sponge or stipple. Okay, because you'll end up with puddles of water everywhere. You want dry-ish resources. So wash is the one, just like if you were having a wash, where you would expect to use lots of water. So, I'm going to choose one of my pieces of paper. I'm going to go for the white one. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to show you how to do it, and then I want you to go away and try it, and I can watch Alex do it in real time. So, what you're going to do first of all, with your brush, is you're just going to wet the paper with no paint yet. This helps you spread the paint quicker. Yes, you can do it if you want, or you can do it once I've finished. Okay, so we're making the paper nice and wet all over. Okay? I should have said, by the way, we are using A5 papers. That's half of A4. Half of A4, split down the middle. Okay, so that's nice and wet now. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to choose my because it's white, there's no point in putting white paint onto white paper. It may seem a bit obvious, but you'd be surprised what I've seen in the classroom. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swirl my wet, I've not added any more water, I'm swirling my brush into my black paint, and what I'm looking for are bubbles on the top of the surface. When the bubbles are there, that means that I know I've got a nice consistency of paint. Okay, so my brush is completely loaded up now with the black, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to sweep from the top down to the bottom. So I'm going to sweep, I'm a righty, so I'm going to go left to right. Sophie, I know that you're a lefty, so you're probably going to go from right to left here. So I'm going to sweep the colour across at the top, 1, 2, 3 times. Oh, I should have said, I hope you've got something covering up your table. I'm now going to put the tip of my brush, I'm not going to clean my brush, I'm just going to put my brush into the water, like that dribbles water off the tub, back up to where I left the paint, and I'm going to sweep down again, maybe just 1, 2 times. I'm then going to put my brush back in the water, that's okay.
No, I like it that way.
Wipe the dribbles of the brush off, pick up where I left off again, and go 1, 2, 3. And you want to try and do this quite fast, you don't really want the lines appearing on the paper.
Okay.
I'm going to put my brush back in the water there, and I'm going to again go to where I was. You can actually see that on camera, see it's starting to blend down. So this is called a blend technique, this is a wash technique, a blended wash technique. I'm going to put my brush back in the water. This time I think I will clean my brush, we're getting towards the end, and again I'm just going to spread that colour down. Now, have you not been washing your brush every time? Now, what you don't want to do at this point, just clean your brush and join up there and spread the colour down. Your paper is very wet and very, very soggy at this point, so what you don't want to do is rip your paper. And that will happen if you keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. The paper is really wet, it's really, really, really fragile. So just go, spread the colour across and leave it. Don't keep going across and again and again and again like Alex is kind of doing now. If there's little puddles on it, that can look like effective, that can look like clouds. So don't panic about it too much. You want it to look quite natural. Now I'm going to move this one to the side, so that's my wash done. Try not to at this point hold it up, because if there are any puddles of paint, they're going to trickle down the page, they're going to spoil your effect. So try and keep it nice and flat. We've got lots of space here, we're really lucky. If you're in school right now, you might be struggling because you've got 4 people around your table. So try and move this into the middle of the table. So I'm just going to move that all the way up here out the road. Okay? Right. Happy?
No.
Alex, could you quietly, without knocking the camera over, go and get some kitchen roll over at the table? Oh, excellent. I'm tripping over my words a lot today. I don't know what this is about. I'm tired. Right. Alex is going to go get me some kitchen rolls. It doesn't matter, just need some kitchen rolls. Alex is going to go get me some kitchen rolls and try my brush now. I don't want a wet brush. Would you bring me some over, Andrew? I need more than one square. Right. Just going to dry my brush off. I don't want it to be too wet. And next up, I'm going to take another piece of my paper and we are going to start working on this textures. So we've got 3 more. 3 more. Now these textures are great because we're going to do them for a landscape, but in the future you might end up painting something else and you might think, ah, I remember when Mrs. Cochran showed me that stipple technique. That would be perfect for this. So this is a way to try and encourage you all to stop just using, when you're painting, just using the brush like normal. Try and think of different ways that you could use your brush. So we are going to go for stipple next, number 2 on the list. In fact, should we go up to the top? We'll go to number 1, go for scumble. So scumble is the thing that I normally in the classroom will complain if I see you doing it, but I'm going to let you do it today because we're using old brushes. If I was to see you do this with one of my watercolour brushes, I probably would be a bit grumpy with you. Okay, so it's not really a technique that I like you to do very much. Now, stop fiddling with that. What you need is a brush that's quite damp. Okay, and you just need a tiny, tiny bit of paint on your brush. Now, I'm going to go with my white paint because I'm using black paper. Paints. Miriam was using these paint sheets that are a bit messy. Right? I'm just going to clean that top layer quickly. It's a great way to clean your paints, by the way. Don't rinse them underneath the tap. Just get some water and wipe off the top surface. just going to get now some paint. Now remember, try and get that nice and bubbly. Get a nice thick coating. You don't want your brush to be too wet. And what you're going to do now on the, I'm going to go for the middle, just put your brush down and you're just going to wiggle that paint right across. Now some of the paper will show through and there might even be spaces on your page. That's okay. So you don't want it to be too wet. If it starts to go too dry, you might want to just add a tiny, tiny bit of water to the paint or to your brush, but not too much. Okay, now the black won't show up on black paper, but it can always create a grey colour with the white, so don't be scared to also add a little bit of black later on. So this is called scumble. This is a technique that people sometimes use on their walls to get a nice texture. So that's scumble.
It looks like a bit like stone.
It does look a bit like stone, and that is exactly what I wanted to look like, so well done you. It looks a bit like stone, it looks a little bit like slate. So if you are doing, I'm tripping over my words, I told you I'm tripping over my words too. So if you're painting a landscape, you might need rocks in your landscape, so this is a nice technique. It also looks a bit like textures of trees or bushes, so that's a good one. And also you haven't used a lot of water there, so actually it's dry already. Can you believe that? So it's not wet, so it's not a wet technique, it's a really, really nice dry one. Where are you going? It's okay. Alex has got a team's meeting at, I think it's 11:15, so he's a bit panicked today, but he's going to miss it.
I think it's 25 past.
Okay, well he can't remember what group he's in, so that's not going to help.
Yeah, well,
Right, anyway, enough of you.
okay,
Next up, we're going to work on our third technique, which is called stipple. We use the tip of the brush for this, not the full width of the bristles, and all you need again is a damp brush. You don't need a lot of paint for this. I'm using the white paper here, so I'm just going to load up my brush with a little bit of, and I'm just going to use the tip of the brush. Now if you go instantly down and a big puddle of water appears, instantly stop, dry your brush, get a bit of kitchen roll, dry up that water and start again. Because that means you've got far too much water and you're just going to end up with big splodges. You're not going to end up with bristles. So if you do what Alex has just done, where he's put his brush down and instantly a big puddle of paint has appeared, you've got too much water, not paint, you've got too much water. Dry your brush.
Oh, wait, is it? Oh, it's not.
You're only using the tip of the brush, so you're looking for something like that. That's
Wait,
all you
need
need.
the whole paper. Or just
No,
not
not all paper. It would be nice to have at least half of it.
Okay, just get some.
I should say that actually, you won't be using all of this paper for your collage. So if you end up with a disaster on one side, don't panic about it. Also what's quite good, if we were in the classroom right now, I would be encouraging sharing. So you might want to swap some of your papers with somebody else to get, you know, even more different techniques. Yeah. Because they might have done their stipple on a white piece of paper or a black piece of paper and you might want to swap with them. So please don't worry if you don't have perfect paper all over, even if you've got one little spot. So this is just called stipple, which creates a really, really nice sort of dotty effect. So that's our stipple. And I've done this so many times, and every single time I do it, it looks different. Okay. Now if you were doing this with colour, you might even want to mix some colours here, or you might even want to get a little bit of white in there and look at that. So it's fine, just keep going, but don't add any more water to your brush. Okay. Right. Stipple, scumble and wash, and yeah, the wash is starting to dry already. So we've got all three done so far. Take it back to the top, so it looks like that. Just use that what you've got already. Yeah, I think you just got too much water on your brush. I don't think it's because my brush is better than yours.
No, it's because it's like got.
No, do you want to swap brushes? Use them there if you want. Yeah, I hope you're all doing okay at home.
There you go.
That's sweetheart. Right, last painting technique now, before we start to make our collage, is the sponge. So for this, you want a damp sponge. You don't want a soaking wet sponge. Again, if it's got lots of water in it, as soon as you press down onto the paper, a big puddle of water is going to appear. So what I actually want you to do first of all is just squeeze out. I've washed these, so just squeeze out any water you've got into them. Yours is dry. If it's dry, you want it to be damp. So put a little bit of the sponge into the water, but then squeeze it as hard as you can.
Oh, it also makes a bit more in water.
No, it just needs to be damp. Listen to what I'm saying. Squeeze out all the water. You want it to be damp. Is it damp? Not wet, is it damp?
Yeah.
Cool. Right, now what we're going to do is take your last piece of paper. I'm going to go for the white. I've got black paper. And what I'm going to do is just load up my sponge. Now, my sponge was damp, but I'm still getting quite a lot of paint now. So now what I'm going to do is just sponge that all over. I'm not wiping up and down, left and right, swirling it around. I'm just gently dabbing. Nobody did it. Normally in class is going to say that word. You'll start dabbing. Just going to start dabbing. How can you accidentally swipe it down?
I was putting it down in it.
Now my sponge has got a really horrible edge to it, which is giving me lines on the page. So what I'm going to start to try and do is build it up, try and get rid of that. If you've got a round sponge, you probably think that's not happening, but I've got lots and lots of edges on it, so I'm just going to try and build up that texture. That's okay, it's just because the paper came actually from a massive sheet, so it's just started to roll up, so it's getting damp. Don't worry about it, just try and keep it flat. Okay, right, I think I'm just about there with my sponge. So we've got a lovely sponge technique. And we've got, don't overdo the sponge by the way, because you'll start losing all the little dots which you're trying to achieve. So we've got a lovely, lovely sponge technique to add to our collection. Right, this is where you will now start to sort of ping off and leave things to dry, because we're going to start building our collage. If you want to stay watching how I construct it and then go away and do it, that's probably ideal. Most of them will be dry. The only one that won't be dry will be the wash, but you could always blast that by a hairdryer or put it on a heater behind you or do something with it. Yours is dry. Yeah, yours is dry actually. If you've used good paper and if you didn't use a lot of water, it should be dry in like a couple of minutes. It shouldn't take too long to dry. I'm going to put all my 4 pieces of paper behind here on the radiator. I'm going to grab my collection from last night. So they're slightly different to those. We've got my sky, this graduated one. We've got a scumble, which were a bit dark actually. We've got my stipple, and we've got my sponge. Okay, so I've got all 4 techniques there. So I'm going to put the dryish one, see the put them in. Yeah, that's okay. You can, what time is it? Is that wet, like soaking wet? It's not quite damp, right? Just maybe watch. Okay. Right, what I'm going to do first of all is I'm not going to do anything to my sky. That's going to be my background sheet of paper. Now, decide, do you want the dark graduation to be at the top or the white one at the top? It's up to you. You can have it that way or you can have it that way. You're the artist, you decide. I'm going to stick mine that way just now. What then I would like to do is we're going to do landscape. So first of all, I want you to think about the way that landscapes, especially in Bridgeburn and Abernethy, are. We're very, very hilly here. We've got lots of mountains and hills. Now, normally what you'll find is there's quite a jagged effect to your background hill. So choose one of your pieces of paper and in the same direction as your sky, not having your paper like that, in the same direction as your sky, so we're going portrait, I want you to tear a zigzaggy line across. Okay? So turning it as landscape, then what I want you to do is just using your fingers like they're pincers on a crab, not whole claws, fingers. You're then just going to tear a zigzag effect on your paper. Like that. Or you could use that. It's up to you only what to use. You're then going to get some glue. And try, boys and girls, and keep this in line with the background paper. Don't have it hanging off the edge here. Try and have it in line. You're then going to glue that onto the bottom of your sky. Or it could be halfway on your sky. It's up to you where you want to So already, you can see how that's starting to come together. We've got Mrs. Cochrane's line of mountains there, sky up above. Okay, and then we're going to go for some hills next. We've got mountains, then we're going to go for some hills. So take another piece of your paper, another piece of your paper. Or, if you want to speak to your neighbour, they might pass over their piece, and you could use theirs. Or, you could even use your other layer. So this could get really long. This could be really long, this landscape, but I'm just going to keep things nice and easy. So I'm going to choose the second piece of my paper. I'm going to go for this one. And this time, don't make it as zigzaggy. Try and make it a bit more wavy. Okay? So again, turn it on its side because you want the distance to be the same as the top one. And this time, we're just going to wave your wavy lines. So it's a bit more like a hill. Okay? And now, for my second layer, I'm just going to stick that down there. Okay, so that's then sticking onto the bottom. There. Oh, God! I've got it upside down, sorry. I wondered why that looks so strange. So we've got that like that. Okay? Right, what's wrong with you?
I use black. No.
It doesn't matter what bit you use. You can use, by the way, you can use any of your paper in any order at this point. Alex is panicking because he didn't use the same piece of paper as me. That doesn't matter. You can use any of your paper. You've got 3 pieces to choose from. Go with any of them in any order. All your paper will look different. So again, you'll need some glue. That's looking really good, dude. Really, really, really nice. It's also embarrassing when your chair does a better picture than you. Right?
Or no.
Okay. We've got that one. And then we've got our last technique, which is quite dark from last night's. So I'm just going to now tear that along the way. Now lots of you might be wondering, why is she tearing the paper? Why is she not cutting it? And if you caught up with me on last Thursday, we did their snowman techniques. And the technique we were using was to tear the paper a lot because it gives a fluffy edge. It doesn't give a sharp, mechanical, jaggy cut to it. Okay, so that's now going to get stuck on the bottom there. Or you could use your second piece, it's up to you. So again, I'm going to get a bit of glue and stick that along the bottom. There, mister. Thank you so much. Okay, so we end up with our layered picture like this. Okay, you've still got lots of other bits left, so you could actually stick that. In fact, I am going to stick that there. That looks really nice. That looks like a river on a wall or something. We're in Scotland next week, and of course it's Burns night this week, so it's quite apt that we're doing sort of Scottish wintry landscapes. Okay, so it's become quite long. Really, really long. You use whatever you want. And now is the fun bit. So one last thing just before I start decorating it. Just try and keep all of your paper in line with each other. And try not to have bits of paper going up and down the way. Try and keep it all having the same direction. What I would be doing in class once these were finished is I would actually trim them, to trim all the edges on my paper trimmer to get it nice and straight so that the raggedy edges are gone. It looks a lot more professional once that happens. So you'll notice with these two, this one in particular, this one's actually got a really, really straight edge. It's been cut on the paper trimmer. But unfortunately I don't have a paper trimmer here to show you that. But that's what I would do, is just slice off the edges just to make it look really professional. You can do that if you have a knife and a metal ruler and a mat. You can cut them off with that, or just cut them off with scissors, just to keep it nice and straight. Okay. Yeah, keep it there. Now actually, I started sticking it all together with this. If it was easy for you, you might have wanted to stick it onto a back bit of paper, just to keep it all in line, but I find it a bit of a waste of paper. But if you want it back in paper, then you can do that. Right, next up we're going to start decorating these, and that's when I'm expecting a lot of you to ping off, because you don't really need to be watching me decorate them. I've got lots of things in my little box here. I have got some chalk pens, which, you know me, I absolutely love a chalk pen. So you can have some dots going on there. Okay, it could be snow. You can actually have it coming down the whole thing if you want to. Or it could be stars. You can use any of the paper that's left over. You could actually cut out extra things. So you could cut out trees.
Okay.
So you could cut out just some simple triangles and stick those down onto your sheet. Can you pass me the glue, please? So you could just cut out some simple trees, you could make snowmen, you could do fences, you could do cottages, bothies. You could have animals like sheep or Highland cows or whatever it is you feel like using. I love to use chalk when it comes to things like this because it gives a nice smudgy effect. So you could highlight your tree there down one side just to give it a little bit more effect. It's starting to really come together. You could, what else could you do? Oh yeah, you could draw silhouettes of trees. So just do like twig trees, whatever you want really. Okay, so that's taken us nearly 40 minutes to do. In class, I normally would do this over 2 lessons. So we do our painting techniques and then we do the decoration part. So that's about me today. I'm not going to finish this off with you all watching because I think you've got enough to begin on with today. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you're catching up later, it's great to see you. If you've got any questions or any problems, please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. And if you've got any suggestions, also get in touch. Don't forget to send me any finished photos of any artwork that you've created. It would be great to put that onto the page for everybody to see. Brilliant for everyone to see that actually. And yeah, next week we will be getting on with Burns night things. If we were in school, we would probably be reciting our poems and stuff. So,
poems. I'm so glad.
am I asking you to do a poem?
No, I'm scared of poems.
So we'll be creating some tartan, kilts with primary 4 to 7, and we'll be weaving some paper tartan for primary 1 to 3, and it will be on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. Don't know what's happening the week after that, so if you've got any suggestions, please get in touch. And thank you to everyone again. Lots of love. Enjoy the rest of your week. And if you're joining me tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow.